Climate action is Sustainable Development Goal 13. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the international venue for actions.
The aim of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 13 is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. This will be done by strengthening resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards and natural disasters, integrating climate change measures into national policies, strategies and planning, improving education, awareness raising, and human and institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction and early warning. Climate change has become scientific fact. 2016 saw planetary warming at its highest level since records began. Atmospheric carbon dioxide is also at its highest ever level. Number of deaths attributed to natural disasters continue to rise every year, and 25 million acres are lost to deforestation every year. 160 countries have ratified the Paris Climate Agreement. More people are now employed in renewable energy industry than oil and gas sectors. Solar power capacity increased by 50% in last year alone. And 66 million trees were planted by volunteers in one day in India this year. Climate change affects everyone. Join GVI and governments and organisations around the world in working together to further promote all of the UN SDGs.
We face extraordinary challenges in the 21st century. 9.5 billion people alive in 2050. We don't know how we will provide them clean water, sustainable energy, education.
There are serious problems with the environment. There are serious problems with bigotry. There are serious problems with poverty and starvation. And so far we've been unsuccessful in figuring out a way to fix them. I'm hoping that AI can adjust the various factors in a way that maybe can solve these problems.
The real opportunity for AI is how we can actually help the 7 billion people that could benefit from these technologies in a practical way.
While we can't say AI is general magic, it is giving us core tools to start putting in place systems that we know will help with key issues like hunger, famine, epidemics, overall health and well-being.
AI offers an extraordinary possibility of accelerating solutions in the time we have to solve the problems.
We are now applying artificial intelligence to the art of farming, a very old industry, also adopting the latest in technology. So through artificial intelligence, a farmer can now integrate massive sources of data, whether it's data from the combines, it's weather satellite data, it's data from the fields, taking all that data together and through an artificial intelligence solution actually making recommendations to the farmer on how he can increase the production of his land.
AI has enormous capacity and potential to solve problems that require an enormous amount of computing and pattern recognition that human beings struggle with.
The way drugs are going to be designed in the future, and again already starting to be, is by having models of the molecules and how they interact, for example, with, say, the virus proteins, and then doing a search to find the best drug for the best problem. I think this, for example, how we're going to cure cancer.
By 2020, you should be able to walk into your doctor's office. Your doctor should be able to sequence your entire genome, take that along with your medical imaging data, compare that with the world's data of genome sequences and medical imaging data. From that, determine the matches between your tumor and others, what the treatments were in those other cases, and the outcome, did the patient survive or not, and from that, devise for you your personalized treatment and do that entire process in just one day. It's completely possible through artificial intelligence.
The UN summit and its goals excite me, in particular with the idea of leveraging what I would call sleeping giants of data. We have accumulated so much data in the world, and with some refinement and some tagging, this data can become available and leveraged to address famine, to address human trafficking, to address vicious cycles of economic poverty.
If you make progress in AI, you make progress in all these different fields at the same time. Right? So better machine learning algorithm, if I invent it tomorrow, it'll make for better medical diagnosis, it'll make for better self-driving cars, and who knows what else.
AI is potentially the most powerful technology that we've ever created, and it's going to create the next form of civilization. It's not happening in 10 years or 15 years, it's happening right now.
Até 2030, temos que aumentar a conscientização em relação às mudanças climáticas. Precisamos nos adaptar e reduzir os impactos com planejamento e capacidade para lidar com as emergências.
Inundação! Só vem todos! Não! A cidade precisa ser avisada!
As catástrofes podem ter uma origem natural ou podem ser causadas pelo ser humano. As fábricas, o lixo, a poluição, os carros e o desmatamento podem provocar as mudanças climáticas. Trocar carros por bicicletas, usar transporte coletivo e evitar o desmatamento são algumas das ações que podem tornar o nosso planeta mais sustentável.
Agora vai!
Além de cuidar da natureza, precisamos salvar vidas e até 2030 teremos um trabalhão para que todas as mudanças tenham o menor impacto possível.
Então todo mundo salvo, que bom.
Ainda bem.
Vamos refletir. Como as mudanças climáticas estão afetando sua região? O que podemos fazer?
If we don't address climate change, the chances are that we will roll back many of the development gains that we have achieved during the last 20-30 years. Climate change has an impact on all the other goals, whether it's education, whether it's achievement of health. Climate change will have an impact on the way we produce food, the way we have our forests, and if we don't address climate change, it will be either more difficult to achieve these goals or actually impossible to achieve them. There are increasing studies, but also increasing experience in many parts of the world which demonstrate that economic growth and addressing climate change do not need to be antagonistic to each other. There are countries like Denmark that have grown enormously while they kept their emissions below what they had before. Yes, there is time. It is getting increasingly difficult, but it is still possible to reach the overall goal of keeping global temperature rise below 2 degrees, but we have to act very fast, and we have to put in place all the emission reduction possibilities that we have looked at and do that as soon as possible. There are 12 goals that have very strong climate change-related targets, whether it's food security, energy efficiency, transport, urban renewal. All of those have impacts on climate change, and when the negotiators see that in fact countries are willing to do all that, they will be more positively inclined to agreeing to ambitious targets, and that's what we need to have. All actions have an impact, and we sometimes, just myself switching off my lights may not make a big difference in terms of the number of power plants it needs to supply that electricity, but if 10 billion people switch the lights off, it makes a huge difference. But at the same time, we also need to look at the big picture and make sure that we vote, we are engaged in the political process, and we look for solutions at the local level, at our own level, but also at the global political level.
Time to put the glasses back on.
Climate change is something that affects all of our lives, whether we're a student, a teacher, or a scientist. And speaking of scientists, I have a guest here with me today that can tell us a lot more about climate change, Josh Willis. Now, you're an oceanographer here at JPL, correct?
Well, I'm an oceanographer, but I study sea level rise and global warming and really how the ocean fits into that whole global warming picture. Global warming is happening because people are emitting billions of tons of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now, when they get there, these greenhouse gases cause extra heat to be trapped on the Earth. So heat that would have otherwise been radiated back out into space is now sticking around and warming up our planet.
Now, all that heat is trapped in our atmosphere, but is it also affecting the oceans?
Turns out that 80 to 90% of the heat from global warming is actually going into the oceans. So the oceans are really the big Earth heat bucket. That's where all the heat winds up going. It turns out that the oceans can absorb 1,000 times the amount of heat as the atmosphere without really changing their temperature all that much. And the reason is because of something called heat capacity.
Do you have an example that could maybe explain heat capacity?
Let's imagine that this balloon represents the whole Earth's atmosphere. So now my candle, my little lighter here, represents the sun, so let's add some heat to it and see what happens.
Now don't try this at home without adult supervision and proper safety equipment. Whoa! So obviously the heat capacity of air is very low because it didn't absorb any heat at all.
Well, that's right. Almost as soon as we put the candle to the balloon, it exploded. And the reason is because since the air inside the balloon couldn't really absorb the heat that fast, all the heat went toward melting the rubber. As soon as the rubber melted, the balloon explodes.
Ah, okay, cool. Now that's a good demonstration of the heat capacity of air. How about the heat capacity of water or the oceans?
Yeah, let's do the oceans. How about a water balloon, Steve?
Sounds great.
All right. All right, Steve, so this balloon filled with water represents the oceans, and my lighter here represents the sun. Let's put some heat on it and see what happens.
Wow. Obviously, it's absorbing a great deal of heat.
Right, so you feeling the heat there, Steve?
I am.
All right, but the balloon really isn't, because it turns out that the water can absorb so much heat that it takes the heat away from the skin of the balloon before the rubber can melt, so the balloon doesn't pop.
Excellent example. So the water has a tremendous ability to absorb heat, and if that's an analog for our oceans, that means our oceans are absorbing a lot of heat as well.
That's right, they sure are, Steve.
All right, well, global warming sounds like quite a problem. What can we do about it?
Well, the first thing we need to do, Steve, is really just understand the problem. Scientists all around the globe, including NASA scientists and here at JPL, we study data from satellites that measure the oceans and the atmosphere, and these tell us about how global warming proceeds and hopefully give us an idea of what the future is going to look like.
It sounds like a pretty serious problem. What is it we can do?
Everything that we do almost uses some kind of energy, and most of it's produced by burning fossil fuels, which release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We could turn off the lights when we leave the room, maybe power down that computer every once in a while and go outside, take a bike ride instead of getting in your car.
Well, thanks, Josh, for coming in and talking to us today about climate change. We really appreciate your expertise.
You bet, Steve. My pleasure.
All right, thanks much. To learn more about climate change and how NASA and JPL are studying the problem, go to climate.jpl.nasa.gov. And for more information about what NASA is doing in general, go to www.nasa.gov.
The weather and the climate are making news.
Has killed at least 72 people.
Under siege in the grip of unmitigated catastrophe.
My name is Bill Futornik. I am the Ritual Director of Congregation Beth Jacob in Redwood City, California. And I brought a group of teenagers mostly, and actually a group last week as well, to Long Island to work with Nechama, which is the Jewish response to disaster. And we're here to rebuild houses. And we're here to help those who were affected by Hurricane Sandy. And we're here to really volunteer and give our time to improve the world. I discovered there's only really one one organization, Jewish organization, that was a disaster relief organization. That's Nechama. And I contacted them, and they were very quick to get back to me, and they just seemed incredibly well organized around this effort. And they said, well, you know, as far as Oklahoma goes, we don't know how much longer we'll be there, but the Sandy rebuilding is going on for another year, which was very surprising to me because, you know, the hurricane hits in October, and for a year and a half they're going to have to rebuild. The minute it leaves the newspaper, it seems to leave our consciousness. Once you get on the ground and do it, you kind of see, yeah, you know, that was a pretty transforming experience. And I know that the group I had last week felt pretty transformed by the experience. You know, in this group, we've been having little debriefs at night, and the teens are saying, you know, how incredibly grateful they feel. And if nothing else, it'll make you feel very grateful for the life that you have.
My name is Sasha, and I'm here. I'm coming from Las Vegas, Nevada, and for half my life I was in prison, and I just feel like I'm spending the second half of my life fixing what I did in the first, and it's just a really wonderful thing working with these people, and just the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Volunteering, I would say, is the absolute most rewarding thing I've ever done, and it's just so nice being able to help people in need, and I'd recommend it to anybody.
I'm Dahlia Jude, and we're in Massapequa, New York, rebuilding homes after Hurricane Sandy. I decided to come here because I figured to make good of my summer, of my free time, and volunteer was something that I was passionate about and help with what I could. We've been on this house for the whole time so far, just the two of us.
My relative's house burned down in a fire locally, and I knew like what devastation came to them, and I wanted to help people like them during my summer. I'm from San Francisco, California, and we're working with Nechama. We're here for 5 days. Even if you don't have any experience building homes, or you've never done anything like this, to come in here and make such a difference, or at least make a little bit of a difference, means a lot to me, that I can learn and kind of just help someone out in any way that I can by being here and doing just my part.
I think the best part of the volunteer experience is seeing the progress we've made on the houses just over a couple of days, and seeing how happy the people who live here are with the work we're doing. I would say it's worth it. It's worth the unpleasant weather and the hard work you do all day, because at the end of the day you feel like you're really making a difference, and that's more than you would make by not doing it. So you feel not only good about yourself, but you feel good about the work you're doing and the people you're helping. So I would just say it's a great experience, and I recommend it.
Being a foster grandparent has definitely given me a purpose in life.
I love Grandma Lydia. My favorite thing about Grandma Kara is doing a lot of fun activities.
Just been so happy, just so much more energy than being at home alone doing nothing but watching TV. It's the best part of my life.
I'm a better student because of her. She helps me with reading sometimes.
I am so proud of the work that I do here.
Best part of being a foster grandparent volunteer, watching the light up in the kids' eyes.
Couldn't be more satisfying.
It makes a difference that you get involved with young people.
Being a foster grandparent has been a wonderful, wonderful experience for me, and I'm not going to give it up.
I'm living again, and the foster grandparent did that for me.
Thank you, Grandma. Thank you, Grandma Carol. Thanks, Grandma Jen, for helping me.
A quick look into England, Scotland, and Wales is a quick look into the culture of Great Britain. What do they do? What are you doing here? What are you going to experience?
Going on the magical mystery tour today. Yep, we've been in Liverpool for a few days. We're having a good time.
Now, have you been to Liverpool before?
No, first time.
Well, I tell you, I was here 20 years ago. What a fabulous change. Liverpool's an evolving city, featuring modern buildings and modern history. Step into Wales and step into Welsh culture, in particular, the food. Meet a local chef and learn from the best. But don't even think about learning the Welsh language. And this is Patrick Davis. He's in charge of tourism and information here in, I'm not even gonna go there. How do I say this name?
It's quite easy. It's Llanfair, Pwll Gwyngyll, Gogerwch, Wynrobwyll, Llantysilio, Gogogoch.
Did you hear what he just said? That was easy. My day is approaching its end, so how about mixing a little culture with some cocktails at the oldest working distillery in all of Scotland.
My mom used to say to me that your talents are God's gift to you, and what you make of them is your gift back to God. So volunteering is one of the ways that we have an opportunity to give back. Several years ago, my husband and I had the opportunity to create a small family foundation. And fortunately, he and I agree on what the focus of that should be. And our passion is to support organizations that are helping people who are trying to help themselves. Closing the opportunity gap is a phrase that's frequently used to describe that. But we have identified a number of fantastic grantees in both Baltimore and Chicago who are engaged in a variety of programs that really work with people young and old who are trying to turn their lives around. So I have lobbied for a financial institution. I've lobbied for the Adler Planetarium. I've helped organizations in Chicago and in Baltimore develop their government relations programs and develop their lobbying strategy, which for a lot of nonprofits is really important because a lot of nonprofits rely on the government, be it state, federal, or local, for a big chunk of their financial resources. They need to communicate their message. I'm very enthusiastic about sharing the great work that's being done here, and frankly, the great work that's being done on the ground throughout the country. It's a really compelling story of changing lives and improving lives being done by the millions of volunteers that CNCS supports. And the key is to get that story out to more people, because the more people, the more decision makers who are aware of the great work being done here, the more support we will have throughout the administration, with Congress, and with decision makers at the state and local level. So I'm looking forward to getting out of Washington, D.C. and meeting with grantees throughout the country. I'm looking forward to seeing the projects they're working on and the impact that those projects are making. It's going to be fun.